Hey everybody, I think we are live. We're going to start here in just a couple of minutes if I can get my friend on the line. Good evening, everybody. It's a couple minutes after 6. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes. Thank you for being here with us. Just a couple of minutes if I can. Welcome to another episode of Common Ground. Hi, Grace. And Michael, welcome. Thank you for sharing the post. I appreciate it. Yeah, please share the post. Thank you. Share the webcast. We really appreciate it. We're going to wait another minute or two. Let me go in here. Hope you guys had a good week. We took a week off because it was my birthday. And thanks. So I took the week off. Glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for coming back, being here, supporting the show, being with us. We're delighted. Hi. Hello, friends. Welcome, everybody. We'll give it another minute before we kick it off. Oh, that's interesting. Let me let him know. I got people messaging me asking if we're on. That's not a good sign. All right, everybody. We're going to start it in just a minute. Great to be here with you. Thank you. Whoops. Yeah. Yep. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Awesome. All right, we're gonna start in just a minute, everybody. Yep. I'm just trying to get back to my live page. All right, cool. Yeah, so I hope you guys are having a good week. Hope you're ready for the weekend. Excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for joining us. Carol, hey, Carol. Hi, Cynthia. Welcome. Glad you guys are here. Yep. Thanks for being here. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start it here in just a second. And if you're watching, please share the show so that more people will pop in and see it. Right on. Thank you. All right. Well, let's get going. We're at the top of we're about it's 6:05. Let's get it going. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. You are on Common Ground, the place where we seek to transform division into understanding most of the time. As I speak, fear and bigotry threaten to tear our nation apart. On this show, we seek to strike a blow against the fear that divides us by listening to one another as we discuss the most difficult topics with respect, civility, and a mind open to a differing opinion. And I'm happy to tell you that we've found over and over again that when we can discuss our opinions freely, we can form an alliance of reason with our fellow citizens. Even when we may not agree, we discover we're not all that different, and it's not so hard to reach common ground. I'm your host, John Lombardo. Our topic for tonight's discussion: are we done with decency? As another election year looms, in a year that's already been a massive challenge for the United States, we stand again more divided than united regarding how we should move forward. And the debate has turned mighty nasty. How important are decency and civility? And can we afford to be cavalier about these aspects of our culture? Or can they be damaged beyond repair? That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And as always, my co-host for this conversation is Mr. Eric Rodriguez. I'm going to bring Eric into this meeting right now. Eric, it's nice to have you with us again. Welcome, my friend. Sorry about the confusion with you there?
Yeah.
All right. How was your week, dude?
Pretty good.
Okay.
I'm hearing an echo. I'm hearing myself in your. Oh, now it's gone.
Not really.
All right. Yeah. I mean, busy. Work is really busy, and but things are all right. How's your week?
I had a very busy week as well. So just so you guys know, what I do for a living is I do musical events, live events, and live bands and things like that. And so we have we have transitioned to doing those virtually, and I'm actually busier than I've ever been in my life. It's been crazy. So we're doing a lot of those events. I'm on Zoom a lot, but I'm very grateful for that. I'm home more, and it hasn't had a massive impact on me financially. So I'm very grateful to have been able to have the shift that I've had. So nothing to complain about. It just is what it is. Hope all of you are staying safe out there and having a good week. Did you? I want to ask you, Eric, but anybody out there, you can chime in as well. Anybody watch the? Hi, Christy. Anybody watch the Democratic National Convention? Eric, did you?
Well, I certainly did not watch as much of it as I did the debates, and yeah, I mean, I tuned in for some things that I thought were important, but didn't watch all of it.
Yeah, I will tell you how I feel about that at the risk of maybe offending some of my friends out there. I I'm not I'm not a big Democrat guy. I I'm going to absolutely, as you know, if you watch the show, I'm I'm not a fan of the individual who is Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of him as a president. I don't think he's the right person to hold that job. But that doesn't mean that all the people in the DNC are any less full of shit than they were 4 years ago. To me, there are some people that I really like in the DNC. There's some, some. I thought some of the Republican people that spoke did a great job, but I didn't really. I sort of cherry picked what I watched of it, and I feel like we're in an interesting place where continuing with what we're doing is not very appealing to me, and so I'm committed to trying to help something different happen for the next 4 years. But I have my level of excitement about that for the next 4 years is not high. I think that there's going to have to be a lot of that people we have to be as diligent about the direction of our country if Democrats win than if Donald Trump wins. It's just a different type of diligence. Either way, the level of involvement I've seen from people, I hope it's maintained because that's what keeps our republic, our democratic republic, safe. In my opinion, I think it's a good thing that people are involved and people are passionate about this issue, the issues, and about what's going on in our country. And I say it all the time. For that reason, a one-term Trump is a good thing for America. It gets people off the couch, gets people involved, and it makes people feel like they have to be engaged in our political processes. What do you think?
Well, um,
You can tell me I'm full of crap. Disagree with me. It's fine.
well, I mean, I don't. There isn't really anything that you said that I feel like I need to disagree with. I, I wouldn't put, I wouldn't put it as lightly as you. I think the current presidency is a complete and utter disaster. Um, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with the president leading my small, tiny little company. I don't think he's able to lead. I don't think he's done. I mean, I think that our country is in a terrible health crisis that would have affected us no matter who was there, but there would have been anybody else would have engaged in the process and taken it seriously and tried to bring people together to ask Americans to participate. And we haven't had that kind of leadership. We haven't had anyone leading or even really willing to engage in the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. And um, and you and I talked about this. I said to you one day, I said, all the president had to do was take the virus seriously and really get people to get together and to call on the American people to make some small sacrifices and he would have gotten reelected in a landslide if because the economy is in serious trouble because the virus response has not been adequate in any. I mean, it's not even that's not saying it strongly enough. It's been a disaster. Um,
How much of that do you put at the feet of the Trump administration? Obviously, I mean, the CDC dropped the ball, massive failures with testing and accuracy of testing. How much fault do you place at the feet of the Trump administration for the disastrous outcome of what has happened so far?
It's impossible to know exactly how things would have went down if different things would have happened. But you and I talked about in March, I mean, it was a long time ago, where it's like, okay, yeah, we didn't get started right away, but we can still get started now, and being able to call upon and get the one thing that I think that when we talk about the Democratic convention, and the one thing that I feel really good about Joe Biden about is that he is very big into getting groups of people together, getting
building coalitions,
building a coalition. And if that's what was needed, a coalition to say, okay, we need to find out what the best tests are, and we need to contact those. And the approach was, states, you're on your own. And I know that that's a philosophy of this administration and of a certain type of governing, but in this type of crisis, leadership and coordination was absolutely needed, and there wasn't any. And that's the reason why the economy is where it's at.
Well, Carol said he doesn't lead, he doesn't follow, and he doesn't get out of the way. Trump has no idea how to run anything. And thank you, Carol. And I also feel like he's struck a blow against our decency and civility, which was already hanging by a thread. And so let's talk about that. That's really our subject tonight. And we have a guest I'm excited to bring on tonight. This gentleman is the founder of Channel Islands Law Group here in Ventura. And he is also president of the Worldwide Civility organization and heads the Masonic Family Civility Project. And we're excited and delighted to have him with us tonight. So, Russ, right now it looks like you're muted and have your camera off, but if you can unmute yourself and join us, we're delighted to have you here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our guest tonight, Mr. Russ Charvonia. And yeah, Russ, there you are. I think we're going to have you any second here. Hi, Russ.
Perfect. Hi, fellas.
Nice to meet you, Russ. This is my co-host, Eric Rodriguez.
He is that way?
Yep. You got to go backwards.
How is my sound? Is that okay?
You sound great. You look great, too. So we appreciate you taking some time to be here with us tonight. And do me a favor, Russ. I want you to, if you can do this, and I apologize for making this, in this format, we have to be as concise as possible, but tell us a little bit about the Worldwide Civility Project and the urgency of civility over the next minute or two.
Fair enough. Worldwide Civility Council is the umbrella organization for a number of different efforts of ours, one of which is the Urgency of Civility Conference. The first conference was held in May of 2019 in Alexandria, Virginia. We had about 80 people representing 25 different organizations, came together to figure out how we can work together to, in a more concerted effort to help to restore civility in society.
Tell me why, what has gone on? What specifically do you see that is, and I know that's a loaded question, and the answer is obvious, but I just want to know, what do you see as the biggest threats to civility, and what are we doing that is a threat to civility?
I'm going to rephrase that, if I may, John, and I'm going to start by saying, what is the biggest threat to our society right now? And I think it is incivility. It's the way we are treating each other, with such contempt and malice, and it's getting in the way of us accomplishing anything for the greater good.
Yeah.
So I believe that we need to get back down to the basics of where even when we strongly, vehemently disagree with somebody, we have enough respect for them that we're willing and able to sit down in the same room and talk about the difficult issues that we face as society.
Well, that's what we hope to do on this show. Of course, you know, we have all kinds of different opinions. We have many conservative viewers, we have many liberal viewers, and we certainly share our own opinions about things. But we try to create a place where people can come and have conversations about things that are challenging without any name calling, without any rage. We've talked a lot. I want to ask you a question, Russ. We've talked a lot about this on this show. What role do you think social media has played in the degradation of civility in our communication?
I think social media is a tool, and any tool can be used for great good or greater evil. Think about a butcher knife. That's how we prepare our food. Without it, we would not eat nearly as well as we do. But what else on the negative side could that butcher knife do? Well, it could literally kill somebody. Social media, how many of us have reconnected with long lost friends and relatives that but for social media, we never would have done so? That's the good side of it. The bad side of it is it's a wall of anonymity behind which people can spew their ugly venom. And so we have to figure out how we can use it for a good tool instead of for the bad purposes. And I think we can. If I can go on one more step, one of the things that came out of that Urgency of Civility conference in 2019 was that we should develop a certified civil designation. So think about the underwriter's laboratory on electronics or the good housekeeping seal of approval. When you see that seal, you have confidence when you're buying that product. Same kind of thing with certified civil, where an organization, an entity, an individual on your Facebook page, your Instagram or whatever, you can apply to be certified civil. And the idea is then you make a commitment to abide by certain standards of civility. And if somebody with whom you're dealing feels you're violating it, we're not going to come after you and wrap you over the knuckles, but rather we'll engage with you and say, John, this is why Eric thought that you were being uncivil. What's your side of this? And how could we perhaps change things around so that it's a better interaction?
What do you think that requires of us as individuals? I mean, that is what you're talking about. Sounds lovely, but it's rarely what happens when people interact. And one of the things that I've talked about a lot on the show is I quote this. This is a Jordan Peterson quote. I use it all the time. That the antidote to the well-developed individual is the antidote to the hostility of society. That it's something that if we don't establish as a people a standard and a principle that this is important to us. It is important to us that we speak to one another with respect, with civility, regardless of beliefs, background, race, all those things. If we can't establish that standard, we will never live by it. So how can we, what do we need to do as people to increase our ability to be civil when we're interacting with one another?
I think it's twofold. I think it's top down. We need leaders who exhibit that kind of behavior, and it's grassroots. It's bottom up, and that's where each of us need to own it. And that's where we're going to drive our leaders. Each of us right here, right now, need to take responsible for our own behavior. Each of us make mistakes. We treat people poorly on occasion. Let's resolve right here, right now, to make fewer of those mistakes tomorrow morning when we wake up. Let's examine our own behavior and be empathetic. Try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. About how might they have taken how I just put that, what I just said to them? In the golden rule that we all hear so much about, how would I have appreciated should somebody have dealt with me in that manner? Once we become aware of where we have room to grow, then we need the tools to start that growth, to continue that growth. And so long as we resolve, each and every one of us, every day, to make improvement, to become that ever better person, we will turn it around.
So I'm going to take a look at the comments. Eric, if you would like to ask Russ a question, I'm going to have a look at the comments while you guys discuss.
Yeah, Russ, is there do you have a mission statement? Do you have a list of things that sort of a guidebook to civility? Do you recommend nonviolent communication as a course? I mean, what are the tools that you speak of tools? What are some of those tools?
First of all, our mission is simply to restore civility in society, plain and simple. A mission that I have sometimes wondered why we've ever undertaken that, because it seems to be a fool's game. And about the time I think about giving up and applying my efforts to something else, I'll get that phone call or email from someone that says, you know, something you shared 4 or 5 or 6 years ago helped me in this instance. And that's what stokes my fire. That's what keeps me going. We've done this through the family of Freemasonry. That's where this effort began, which is the world's oldest fraternity. And it's all about treating people with dignity and respect. So we take the lessons that we learn in our Masonic Lodge and we apply them in our everyday lives. So if somebody wants to go to MasonicCivility.org, there are tons of resources there, both for inside the family of Freemasonry and in the greater world. And you're welcome to any of those presentations that are there, articles and so on. We work closely with the Institute for Civility and Government, where they are taking students to Washington, D.C. and showing them how government works, and helping to breed civility both in the representatives and the students. We work closely with the Institute for Civil Dialogue out of the Arizona State University Hugh Downs School of Human Communication. And they have a civil dialogue exercise that we do far and wide. When we're in a community that's struggling with some particular thing that's threatening to tear the community apart, we come in, we show them this exercise. And the point isn't to convince somebody else that your way is the right way, but to demonstrate that we can have very differing opinions that we're passionate about and still engage in a productive conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Common Ground. We are discussing the threat to civility in our society. Our guest tonight is Russ Charvonia. Did I say that correctly, Russ? Charvonia?
Better than I do.
And he is the president of the Worldwide Civility Council. So I've got a couple of questions here. Pete Thomas asked, Russ, how do we discuss things in a civil fashion when we passionately disagree?
There's not one single answer to that. It takes a lot of components in order to do it. Number one, I would encourage you to talk in terms of I statements. I think, I feel, I believe, as opposed to you statements. I can't begin to say how Eric thinks or what he believes because I'm not in his head. The only point of truth I can speak from is my own. Number two, engage in active listening. That we're all good at talking. It's the listening part that we need a lot of development on. So when you're in that conversation, especially when you're getting passionate and heated about it, slow down, make sure you're truly listening to that other person. And if you show them that respect of listening, hearing them out, without interrupting, without formulating your response ahead of time, they'll probably give you that deference as well. And then the other thing is, when you're just one-on-one with somebody that you're really passionately opposed to, it makes sense to have some kind of facilitator to help you in that conversation, where that person can bring the conversation back on track when it starts going off the track. So there are ways to do it, but it really is an art that we need to rebuild. I think we've lost that ability to communicate.
I like you called it an art. I'm sorry, go ahead, Eric.
If I may, civility is easy when things are going swimmingly. We frankly don't need it then. When we need it is during tough times. So we have to have exercised those muscles so that when we encounter those difficult conversations, we don't revert back to our animalistic attitude, but we're able to take a more dignified road.
Eric, what were you going to say?
Well, one of the things that I feel like happens quite often on the show, is people are a little careful because we set those ground rules. People are more careful in our comments, even when we have a very different idea, and it's sort of we've said this is the way that we want to talk to each other. We want to respect each other's point of view and disagree civilly, and just having sort of that front-loaded intention, I think really helps a lot. We've never had any real nastiness I mean, I remember just one incident, and of course, no one that we had on a speaking guest, but I mean, even in the comments, which is where I see most of the nastiness, not is just the way that people comment on social media to one another. So I think one of the things you said it was important, Russ, is just setting that intention. We're going to be civil. It goes a long way, and I've many times I've taken something somebody said on our comments on the show and really thought about it. And John and I talk about it later, and it's something that I a point of view that I didn't really agree with, and it really helped me to further my thinking about something. I may not come around to really agreeing, but it broadened my perspective by just really thinking about it. And I try really hard to listen, but I can certainly, I think that an aggressive response is the easiest way to get me to tune out, to think, to write that person off. If someone's going to be insulting, it's the easiest way for me to say, well, it's not worth my time to consider their position.
We are not going to be able to have productive conversations with everybody with whom we come in contact. There are some people that are just so stuck in their ways and just so determined to beat you up, bully you, if you will. Behavior we would never tolerate with our children or grandchildren, but as adults, somehow it's okay. Those people, I say, just don't even engage with them. But where the other person is willing to have an intelligent, responsive dialogue with you, engage. That's how we're both going to grow. And I think if we can all realize that there are really very few absolute truths in this world, that there is very little that's purely black, purely white, purely light, purely dark. There's a whole lot of movement in between there. And when we listen to somebody that has a different stance than we do, that's where we grow. And isn't that what we want to do? If we're not growing, what are we doing? We're decaying, and that's on our way to dying.
That's always been my opinion, that if I were only surrounded by people who completely agreed with me, I would stagnate. I don't for one moment entertain the idea that I've got a clear perspective on everything that's right. And I know for a fact that I'm mistaken about a good many things. And I appreciate when people are able to offer me an opinion that can help me get through my own, wade through my own, lostness, if that's a word. Guys, we're talking with Russ Charvonia. He's the president of the Worldwide Civility Council. Your questions are welcome. Chime in. This is Common Ground. I want to read a couple of interesting points that our viewers have made to you, Russ, and you can respond if you want. But I like this one. Cynthia Leonard said, historically, generations have been trained to be soldiers and factory workers. This leads to the majority being unable to think critically. Therefore, we are led by our emotions. That's an interesting point, Cynthia. I was listening to a group talking about reforming education this week in another Zoom call. And the young lady that was talking about the educational reform she recommended referenced a quote from Rockefeller back in the day, who said, "I don't want critical thinkers, I want workers in this country." And that was part of the design of the education system was around that ideology. And either Eric or Russ, would you care to comment on that?
Well, we could go on for a day and a half on that, but a lot of people are blasting the idea of the liberal arts education and how that's not getting them somewhere. Well, I would challenge that the idea of teaching somebody how to think critically is one of the best tools that we can ever train a young person in. So I agree with that, although I'm not going to make a blanket statement that factory workers can't think on their own or soldiers can't think on their own, but I understand the concept behind it.
And one of our viewers, Zach, says, however, it's irresponsible to not take notice. If you're always having infuriating conversations with members from the other party, it's probably the man in the mirror contributing.
Bingo.
That's something I see a lot too. People say all Trump supporters or all liberals. No, it's probably your ability to communicate. Well said, Zach. I love that. That's great.
I'm going to share another concept with your viewers, if I may, and that is what I call the presumption of decency. The previous person there alluded to this, where instantaneously. Biden comes on the TV, we react one way. Trump comes on the TV, we react another way. And we're so programmed that way. You know, RD, blue and red. I want us to flip that on its head. And keep in mind, this is going to be really hard because it's been innate in us for the millennia. It's kept us alive as a species for a long, long time, that we instantaneously, subconsciously judge people as whether they're a threat. Should we run and hide from them, or should we run up and offer a hug to them? Well, these days we don't offer the hug. But, instead, let's presume that everybody with whom we come in contact is a decent person. Even our elected officials who may be going about doing things in a totally different way than we think we would. But if we trust that they have our best interest at hand, in mind, they're just doing it a different way than we think they should, now we have a different attitude towards it. By the way, sometimes this presumption of decency is going to prove us wrong. There are some real life jerks out there that don't deserve our decency. But I'd rather be wrong on occasion than assume everybody's a jerk and be proven wrong all the time.
I love that. I love that. I'll tell you, Russ, this will come as no surprise to our viewers. I'm quite vocal about this. I really struggle with what you're talking about with President Trump. I really consider him to be a person who is toxic to the character of our nation. But what I tell myself over and over again to try to manage that, because I don't want to be stuck in that mire. It's, look, I can sit in my room and despise Donald Trump all day long, and what have I accomplished? I've made myself a little bit sicker, is all I've done. So one of the things I tell myself is, I say, his kids seem to really love him. He must have done something right there. You know, I try to tell myself that, so not to change the way my perspectives about that individual, but to change the way I'm feeling and the toxicity of the emotions I'm indulging in myself.
That's not easy to do.
No, it isn't. I want to read a couple more. Eric, if you have something to toss in, I'm going to look at a couple more comments. Guys, it's common ground. Our guest tonight is Russ Charvonia. He is the president of the Worldwide Civility Council. Your questions are welcome. We're talking about how important it is to be civil to one another. I think it's incredibly important. But Eric, go ahead and if you've got anything to throw in, I'm going to look at some of the comments we have from our guests.
Well, one of the interesting things that was just being talked about was this idea of critical thinking. And, you know, we have talked a few times recently about all the misinformation and that is sometimes purposely and oftentimes, unwittingly sent out, shared, just very, very misleading information. And, and probably it came originally from a source that somebody was trying to mislead people. But there's so much bad information out there. And this, this lack of critical thinking, John and I sometimes will put up an example of something that we see on the internet or something that's being talked about, and we'll kind of break it down a little bit. But without critical thinking, we don't have the ability to do that. I mean, we should be able to kind of step back. And one of the things you just talked about, Russ, was like having a sort of knee-jerk reaction to something really doesn't serve any of us. We really need to be able to look at the information coming in and be able to think critically about it, especially when it comes to spreading things around. We're seeing a lot of damage being caused in a lot of different areas, even lives being lost from disinformation. Do you have any advice about how to handle that?
I do. John earlier talked about social media being a big problem. I think another huge problem is just the magnitude of information that's bombarding us day in and day out. And our coping skills, at least mine, is you start filtering through and narrowing the sources of information that you get. And look, social media, Facebook is known for feeding you the information that coincides with your thinking. I don't think I've ever looked at the news on Facebook, but I read 3 newspapers a day. I try real hard to listen to both Fox and CNN for at least a period of time. I try not to listen to one of them too terribly much, which isn't easy to do. But then I also try to fact check. And before I go forwarding things to 10 other people, I try to take the time to figure out, is this for real? Is it accurate? Is it a correct portrayal? I also think we need to support investigative journalism. If you think about the one thing that's really caused this crack over the last 2 decades, when is the last 3-part series in a LA Times or Washington Times or New York Times or whatever on an expose that you've seen? You know, we used to have 60 Minutes and so on. They don't even expose that much anymore. It's really hard for journalists to get in and give us the information that we're needing to formulate our opinions. So support that. There's a group called All Sides that I'd encourage you to check out.
Oh, yes. I'm familiar with All Sides. I've been using it lately. It's great. I love it.
I think it's a great resource. And I love how they continuously survey the various sources of news, and you'll see them kind of evolve. And I'm not telling you read everything in the center, read from the left, read from the right, and formulate back to your critical thinking that we've been talking so much about.
We've got a couple of comments I want to talk about here. Cynthia Leonard, I think she's talking about our comments about our president. She said he's a reflection of the state of the nation, in my opinion. However, his presidency was necessary. Otherwise, many of our problems would go back to being willfully ignored. Cynthia, that's the tip of the sword that I think we're poised upon in this election year, and is that I think that whichever we're as Americans, we're given 2 choices for leadership, how we move forward, and I think that both choices presented to us in this election are deeply problematic, because if we have if Trump gets 4 more years, I really think that's an existential challenge for the country. It's my opinion that this person, I'm going to talk about that later. I'm not going to get into that too much. But if Trump doesn't get reelected, if Joe Biden becomes the president of the United States, then we are back with some of the status quo politics that got us here in the first place. And I want to ask Eric to articulate something, to elaborate upon something you articulated to me, Eric, that I thought was a really good point in one of our conversations. And you said, you kind of, I am not a Joe Biden fan. I've been vocal about that since day one. When there were 20 candidates on the stage, I said on the show over and over again, he was my 20th choice. I'm also, for the first time in my life, going to get on a phone bank tomorrow to help him get elected in Michigan. So there you go. There's the paradox. But Eric, you said it's kind of good that we're going to have a president who is not the subject of idolatry. He's not a hero to anybody. Obama was so revered. He was such a hero to Democrats. And now we have Trump, who really has almost a cultish support group. And you said it would be healthy for us to have somebody that we don't have those overwhelming admiration emotions toward, so that they can actually be held accountable to get some things done and get things changed, get work done. And I really think that's a powerful point. You want to elaborate on that, Eric?
Well, I mean, you kind of summed up the point pretty well. I mean, that's the point that I was trying to make, was that we've had a little bit of hero worship. You know, we had it. You know, a good portion of the country had it with Obama, and you know, there is just a group of people that, no matter what Donald Trump does, you know, they're just going to be behind it and find a way to defend it. And I think that we get, when we have a little bit of hero worship, we get defensive about anybody criticizing that person. If we don't have hero worship, we're not so quick to defend. You know, I think that it will be easier for us to hold. If Joe Biden were to become president, I think it would be easier for us to hold him accountable to things that he promised to do, or directions that he, you know, his administration starts going in. That I think that and it'll be easier for us to hear criticism from the other side without that, without that hero worship. I mean, that's essentially it.
If we don't have to defend the individual because of our emotional attachment to the individual, we can hear about the issues and with a more of an open mind. I couldn't agree with them. I think it's such an important thing.
If I may share, something that we created is what we call the Civility Scorecard. And we developed this hoping it would be ready for the last primary elections, not the one just happened 4 years ago. It's now built, but the idea is that we can take a person's speech, anybody's speech, put it in here, and it uses artificial intelligence to rate the relative level of civility. My ultimate dream for this is that we can automate it so that it's doing it in real time. And again, the idea here is that it encourages the people who are seeking our votes to treat each other with a level of civility and us as the voting populace, so that we can really hear and understand what they intend to do for us and to us. Now, we recognize there's going to be some candidates that pride themselves on having a low civility score, but we think that this kind of thing can encourage the right kind of behavior. And that's how we're hoping to change the world. Is, there's nothing I can do about a Donald Trump. I'm not ever going to change that kind of personality. But if I can help each of us to have the right tools to change our own behavior and encourage others to act in a proper manner, that's how we believe will make a difference over the course of this next generation.
So, Zach said 2 people about to make the government massively larger, voting based on the 2 Supreme Court justices. Both sides have lost their mind. That's, Zach, we could have 5 shows about this, in my opinion. And I don't want to get too far off the civility topic. In fact, I want to share some things with you. But the idea that, so when we say both sides have lost our mind, we're talking about ourselves, guys. We are the sides. It's not them, it's us. And I think that it's easy to get caught up in that, but also to forget. Well, the sides, in my opinion, are promoted by people who really benefit from there being sides. And I think that one of the most dangerous things we do as Americans is buy into a side over our citizenry, our national citizenry, and I would even say global citizenry. I think the side diminishes us. And I think the side plays into the hands of those who seek to grind us down for their own for the meal and their own at their own banquet. I really believe that that's so evident in American society right now. And the corporatization of American politics is something. It's not something we can blame on any one person. It's been going on for 100 years, probably longer than that. But our forefathers foresaw this. Please go look at what George Washington said about political parties. They foresaw this. Paula, who's watching, said there's a famous quote: "Business is the greatest form of laziness in history. Maybe men worked long hours to put food on their table, and women keeping house and caring for their children. They didn't have time to reflect, consider, or to question. Our time is so different. It's obvious to me that young people are taking the time to think and make a difference. These kids are our future, and from what I've seen, it's going to be great." Paula, I love that you said that. Thank you so much. I think that all the time. I see my children and their friends, and I think they are going to overcome a bunch of the challenges that we lived with. I agree with you. They're going to have new ones, and of course, and we're giving them some of those as our legacy to them. But I couldn't agree with you more. I'm really glad you said that. Thank you, Paula.
If I may, I concur with Paula. I think we need to turn over the keys of the world to this younger generation now. We need to stop messing it up for them and let them get to repairing it. And our job is create a safety net under them, so if they fall too hard, we can pick them back up. But otherwise, let them go. They get it. I have a 25-year-old daughter. I have grandchildren. And guess what? These young people get it. Let's get out of their way.
Yeah, great. Russ, where can we find more about what you're doing with the council? Where can we get more information about what you're doing? How can I share that with my viewers?
The Worldwide Civility Council is relatively new. We formed it just the beginning of this year as the umbrella, as I mentioned. Go to MasonicCivility.org, MasonicCivility.org for other resources. Anybody can email me, Russ at Civility Council. I'll be happy to share some information with you. One of the things that we're doing is we're building a core of civility, of community civility ambassadors. These are people across the country that we're putting together, giving them resources so that they can begin in their local communities to restore civility.
Russ, did you say Russ at civilitycouncil.org? Did I get that right?
We did.
Okay, great. Well, Russ,
what does that look like? What does a job of a ambassador look like in that?
So one of the great
what
hopes.
doing?
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
What kinds of things would they be up to?
One of the great hopes that I have is it's just a sharing of resources first and foremost. So passing around tools to engage in civil dialogue and so on. But one of the great hopes I have is that when somebody realizes that their community is in the midst of beginning to be torn apart. I'm in California. We have big arguments right now over Padre Sarah, Father Sarah, and should the statues come down and so on. Well, I would like to give these communities the tools whereby they can engage the community to have a worthwhile conversation about the benefits and disadvantages of tearing down those statues. I used to use the example of Charlottesville. Now that seems like ancient history, 3 years ago or so, right? But could that community, when they started to feel the tension arising over the presence of Confederate soldier statues in the town square, could they have engaged in some conversations about that ahead of time before it reached a boiling point? And I think if we can get people to have that awareness in their own communities and have the tools to suggest to the elected officials, open up a library and we can get back together again. Let's have these civil dialogues instead of I'm not against protesting. Protesting has its place. I am against violence. And it should never be devolving into that. And it's going to if we allow this all to bubble up under the surface without addressing it. So that's what we want our civility ambassadors doing.
Russ, thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight. I hope you'll come back and join us again. I really appreciate you and appreciate you being here tonight.
Anytime. I appreciate the opportunity. Keep
All right,
up
Russ.
the work, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Russ.
You're welcome.
So I want to, that was once again, that was Russ Charvonia, guys. He's the president of the Worldwide Civility Council. He's the co-founder of Channel Islands Group. They're a financial and wealth management group here in California. It was really nice to have him with us. And, I wanted to talk about this. We've talked so much about decency on this show that I wanted to get, I really wanted to get his opinions on those things. I'm really appreciative that he's here. Guys, once again, your questions are welcome here. This is Common Ground. It's a forum for you. We want to hear from you. Zach said, our kids will be more emotionally intelligent than any other generation before us, and theirs will be further along than that. It's crazy that the opinion of so many is the opposite. More knowledge creates a more peaceful world, long term, always has and always will. Thanks, Zach. That's could not agree with you more. I want to share some things with you guys. And, we don't like to talk about politicians on this show. They get enough press. There's enough of that crap going on in the press. But one of the things I really want to do on this show is get people of dramatically different opinions to talk about what drives them apart. And the funny thing, all week long, Eric, you know this, I get messages from people who want me to sort of change my views about the Trump administration based on facts that what their perceived facts that they send me. And I want to articulate this because there's a few comments in here, and I just want to articulate this. My objection to Donald Trump is not political. It is not. I know that I lean liberal. There's no question about it. And when you hear my opinions and the things I have to say, I'm going to lean liberal. I also challenge anybody to tell me that if you tell me I'm wrong, I won't listen to you. I don't think I'm right about everything. But I want to explain myself a little bit. I'm going to show you guys some examples. And Eric, we can talk about this. And of course, I want to hear you guys chime in. Going to share, go to the screen share with you. And going to minimize my screen here. And I want to show you some things that I saw today. So here's my question to you guys. How do we condone this? How do we as a society, forget politics, how do we condone this? This shirt is for sale on the Donald Trump for President website. And it's a picture of Adam Schiff as a clown. And it's called the Pencil Neck Schiff t-shirt. Now, that might be funny, you know?
Hey, John, I don't see it.
Oh, you don't see it? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Oh, I see. Hold on a second. I'm sorry, guys. There it is. I think I have it now. Is it back? Okay. Now I'm screen sharing. I'm trying to get my, there we go. So let me just move this out of the way. Sorry, guys. It's a little tricky. There it is. Do you see it now, Eric?
I do not.
No? You're not seeing that? Interesting. Well, I'm sorry the screen share didn't work, but I got to tell you, I don't want to give the guy any press. I don't want to go on and on about this, but it's just so offensive to me. And look, if you showed up at my house in that shirt, you know, like Adam Schiff, and it said Pencil Neck Schiff, fine, go ahead and laugh at it. That's fine. It's a joke. I don't care. But for a man who represents every human being in this country to have that type of paraphernalia on his site, I think it is detrimental to the civility. I think it models a very destructive behavior. These are the kinds of things that make it so impossible for me to get behind the administration. It's not political. It's this kind of stuff that just makes me lose all respect for the way that things are handled. I know you know what I'm talking about, Eric. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I don't even know. Sometimes I think, what do you even mean politics? You know, I heard the president comment on when Kamala Harris was announced as the VP, and it was just all personal attack. There wasn't a single comment that had to do with politics or policy, or it was just all personal attack. And I mean, I don't know. I guess politics come into play, but I don't feel like I ever get to politics because there's the leadership that we have right now is, every time I see it's purposely dividing. The strategy is to humiliate and to denigrate opponents. And I just don't even, it's hard to even get to the policy. And as I said about the biggest crisis that we've had in our lifetime, the president just said, I'm not doing anything. So I don't even know what to say. I think that it's strange to me because it just seems like I don't have much to say about him because I don't respect him as a man, I respect him as a human being, like I respect his right to be alive, but I don't respect him. The way that he behaves is not something that I would want in any walk of life. And he's supposed to be leading the country, and he doesn't lead. And I don't, I literally think that any other politician from the Republican Party or the Democratic Party would be a better option. Um, I do.
Cynthia said, I agree Trump is not good. Biden is no better. They are two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. Um, and Paula said, I have friends that love guns, love Trump, and they say that those of us who don't, I think I got that right, are pussies. She said, I'm a bit tough, no pussy. This is the talk of people unwilling to listen to another opinion without making the other person feel bad. That comes from the top. So I'm going to, for the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to take us on a weird trip here because, and Eric, you'll be able to come right along here. I'm reading a book written by a neurologist, and it's a book about spirituality and neurology. And it's about the left brain. And there's an interesting story about a doctor named Jill Bolt Taylor. In 1996, she had a massive stroke, and her left brain went offline essentially. And she was completely right brain because her left brain ceased to function. She entered this blissful detached state. She said what Buddhists would probably call nirvana. Her egoic self was diminished. And the reason that happened, and neurologists are starting to understand this now, and it seems like Eastern mystics have known this for a couple of thousand years at least. But what happened is the left brain center that interprets the world for us went offline for this person. Now, she had a blissful experience, but it's very interesting to understand what that left brain center does for us. So when we look at a thing and we don't know what it is, our left brain interprets it for us. And according to the research, of 50 to 60% of the time, it's wrong about what it interprets. So one story that they tell in the book is about a woman sitting at her desk and seeing her friends whisper about her and making it up that they don't like her and they're plotting something against her. And what they're actually planning is her birthday party. I remember Stephen Covey telling a powerful story about being in a waiting room at the hospital and seeing this a man sitting there, with his children playing, and they're just going crazy. The kids are just maniacal. And he's frustrated by the fact that this man isn't taking care of his children. He's not managing his children. They're going crazy, and he's sitting there staring off into space, to where he finally went and said something to the man, and the man says, I'm sorry, you're right. I should be paying more attention. I'm kind of spaced out because we just found out my wife has terminal cancer. And that completely changed Covey's way of being toward this human being. One thing I used to do, I used to drive to Las Vegas every week of my life, guys. 5 hours there, 5 hours back. There'd be 2 days in between. I used to do this every day of my life, and I'd be in a car, and you see some pretty stupid driving on the way to Las Vegas, okay? People speeding around, up and down, going crazy, slamming on brakes, showing off, whatever. And I noticed that I was spending a lot of time on that drive getting angry with people. And so what I started doing was this simple thing. I started saying, I guess that person really has to poop. And you know what? That solved the problem for me. I had compassion for that person needing to go to the bathroom. I don't know if they're a jerk or if they have to go to the bathroom or if they have a sick child in the car and they're speeding. I don't know. But why not make up something about the situation that has me feeling compassionate and loving instead of being angry, right? So this interpreter in our mind, which by the way also interprets us, interprets things that are most of the time not true. Now ask yourself this question. When it comes to politics, the White House, Congress, how much do all of the people out there on the internet, how much do we know about it? Almost nothing. We're making up most of this crap for ourselves. We're telling ourselves a story, but we're buying into that story on such a level that we attack one another for disagreeing with our own bullshit story that we made up. So what if you told yourself, Whenever you're talking about something about which you are not an expert, about a conversation or an event that you weren't there for, what if you told yourself, I don't really know what happened? So I'm going to espouse an opinion here, but that's the best I can do. What if we all did that? What would happen? Eric, I know you will chime in here, man.
Well, I think that, I love that story, and I love that example of the left brain. We have these that this is constantly what we're doing. We're categorizing. Our left brain is constantly categorizing everything and sticking it in. And as you pointed out, this research shows that at least half the time we get it wrong. We know this about our hearing and our seeing, that our brain has this ability to be able to fill in gaps, and we accept it. And so I think that's what you're talking about. The crux is accepting a conclusion without doing any critical thinking or without doing any research, and some of this is very simple. Some of this is in terms of believing we know what liberal means, believing we know what conservative means. What I saw this long list the other day of this person said Joe Biden is going to do these things, and it was this long list of like all of these things that I paid.
Hurt God was out on the list.
Hurt God. No, that wasn't on this list. But like this person was very, very passionate and very positive that all of these things were going to happen. And I paid quite a bit of attention. And most of those things were not things that have been talked about during the Democratic debates, or, just a lot of it was just assumption. And it's not like I'm not, I'm obviously I make assumptions too, but I try really hard to watch behavior for over and over and over again before I make before I draw a conclusion. And even after I draw a conclusion, I try really hard to stay open to it. And one of the things that I think that the category, and this isn't a criticism of Zach. I appreciate his participation and even the comment that he made, but even things, it's just the first thing that popped in my mind. Even phrases like big government. This is a slogan that isn't that meaningful. That really what we have to be careful when you're talking about that left brain categorizing. We have to be careful about categorizing something in a way that's amorphous, that doesn't, we have to be careful about using language that doesn't really, getting down to the nitty gritty and really talking about specificity is way more effective than slogans. Slogans and labels and sides are detrimental to civil conversation and to getting somewhere. And so, that's something that I try to pay attention to, and that's what comes to mind.
Carol said, "Isn't that what the wife of the slaveholder did to not feel anger at how her beloved household worker was being treated? She was in nirvana, they were in hell." And Carol said, "Life isn't about us feeling better; it's about making life better for everyone." Carol, I have experienced as I've gotten older that when we are about the business of trying to help others, that is when we feel the best. So long as we're doing it with an open heart, we're programmed that way. It's our floppy disk. That's an old reference. Paula said, "I'm always questioning people that are so confident in their opinion." Paula, there's a saying in the Tao Te Ching. It says, "Those who say don't know; those who know don't say." And I think that applies here. But Eric, we got to do something here. We got to do something, my friend. There's a news story. I want to take a minute and I want to cover it. So Steve Bannon, you know who he is. Steve Bannon was arrested and he was indicted this week for allegedly stealing money out of a $25 million wall fund, a crowdfunded wall fund, $25 million to build Trump's wall. And he's pleaded not guilty, and this is America. He's innocent until proven guilty. But I want you guys to know we did a little bit of research in the Common Ground journalism team, our crack team of journalists. We did a little bit of research, and we found a few things out. And I think that when you understand what Steve Bannon had to pay for in the last couple of months, I think you're going to be a little more lenient on him. So what do you think, Eric? Can I share this with everybody? So
yes, please
these are the
do.
top 10 things that Steve Bannon needed that wall money for. Are you guys ready? Here we go. Number 10, $13,000 for removal of Bannon Cannon tramp stamp tattoo. He wanted to get rid of that thing. It was something he did when he was young. $12,000 for weekly bourbon colonics. Number 8, $20,000 to Roger Stone for lost dare to wear cliche bad guy hat and glasses in court. Lost a bet, Eric. Lost a bet.
I mean, it is, that outfit is, I mean, he it's the penguin. I mean, it's incredible.
$80,000 hush money to evil Eastern European scientists to keep mum about reptilian human hybrid DNA experiment, codenamed Stephen Miller. I didn't write these, I promise. $45,000 to for Koch brothers collector's edition baby seal club made of real rhino tusk and ivory. Oh, come on. $150,000 to send Rudy Giuliani to Africa to make absolutely sure that Wakanda, with all of those rich, attractive, powerful brown people, isn't a real place. That was a concern to Steve. $200,000 for exclusive rights to Bouquet de KFC, a new Trump fragrance with delicate hints of jasmine, subtle tones of egomania, and a dash of Obama envy. Okay. $29,000 for 18 cases of industrial strength leopard skin Spanx for men. Steve will look good in those. He will. $75,000. Oh no. $75,000 to send his children to Mein Sommerkampf. Terrible. And number one, the number one reason he needed that money, bail for when all the other Trump administration guys get busted. All right, that's hey, we love humor here. That's I didn't write those. Those were from I won't say who wrote them, but you gotta have a few laughs, don't you, Eric? Am I right?
Occasionally.
Okay, so I want to talk about something Cynthia said. She said, I wonder, do either of you think we will get through this moment in history without violence? I think we can, but do not think we will. That's a good question, Cynthia. Eric, what do you think about that?
I mean, we've already had some terrible violence, and we already had, I mean, unfortunately, most of it was police on citizen, but there have been citizen on citizen violence already. And, you know, I don't know with the way things have been recently. I hope, I have the same fear that there's going to be some real terrible things that might happen.
I'll tell you what I think, Cynthia. As Eric said, I think there's already been some violence, and I don't think this election goes down without some serious trouble. I do not want to project any. I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong about this. Okay, but I think that if Trump's reelected, I think that a small number of people are going to be inspired to take up arms. I do think that. I believe that he's the kind of person that might even incite that. And I think that if Joe Biden is elected, no, did I say if Trump is not reelected? If Joe Biden is elected, I think a small number of people will be inspired to take up arms. I don't think it's going to be a lot of people, but enough that there would be some trouble. And I think, like I said, I think he's the kind of person that were you to lose, he would incite something like that. Just my opinion. If Joe Biden loses, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of protesting that will probably lead to some violence. I think that the people that are going to be up in arms about a Democratic loss are more likely to start, I think, with protesting. But then you know what happens with protesting. Look, here's the danger with protesting, and let's be honest, because I've attended 2 Black Lives Matter protests. I am absolutely 100% on board with the idea that we need to work to make our legal system and our justice system more balanced and fair for people of color, for whatever that takes. If it takes massive changes, I'm down for it. And protests sometimes are necessary. They've produced results. Look, Ahmaud Arbery was hunted down and murdered by 2 white racist men, and nothing was going to happen in that case. The protests got those guys convicted, or I'm sorry, they're not convicted yet. They got those guys arrested. They brought that in. The same thing, Breonna Taylor. This is a woman sleeping in her home, door kicked in, shot by police. No one's even been charged in that case yet. Okay, so do we need this type of activism? Yes, we do. However, here's the problem with protests, especially the big protests we've seen. No way to deny it. It creates chaos. There's a mob mentality that takes over, and some people, we've seen it. Some people behave poorly. They break windows, they steal shit, they light stuff on fire. That's stupid. That doesn't help anything. That's not the way you win this type of a battle. But there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of anger, there's a mob mentality. It takes over, and bad things happen. And that's not going to be any different in this protest. And I believe that we are so entrenched in the division of left versus right that, look, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to, as long as I believe that we had a fair election, I'm going to accept the results. I'm an American, that's what you got to do. But I think there are people who will act out with passion and even possibly violence, regardless of the outcome. So I think we've got a rough road ahead of us around the election, and I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong about that. Carol said, I don't think our military will allow him to stay in the White House after the election if he loses. Yeah, but, Carol. Rob, I don't know what NESARA means. I'd like to know what that means. I'll be happy to read it aloud and share your thoughts with everybody. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. And she said, I fully agree with what you see, and I'm hoping I'm also wrong. So, Carol, you said that you don't think the military will allow him to stay in the White House. So I want to, once again, I'm going to address this. In a few minutes here, guys, I'm going to make my case very clear about this. I personally don't think Donald Trump is going to try to stay in the White House if he clearly loses the election. I don't think he'll do that. I don't think he's got the stomach for that kind of a fight. I don't think that's what he's about. I do think that if he does lose the election, I think he will do as much as he can to make the transition time difficult, unpleasant, challenging, and not smooth. I do think that I think he's that kind of person. I think he's the kind of person, he's shown it over and over again, he'll get nasty. That's my thought about it. But I want to get, I'll tell you what, guys. Eric, why don't you wrap us up? We're over an hour. It's an hour and 15 minutes. Why don't you throw out your final comments, and then I'll do my final bit, and we'll go have a weekend. What do you say?
Sounds good. I've been so busy with work, and I've been very happy to not be thinking a lot about politics and some of these big problems, that sometimes really weigh on me heavily, as you know. I do not like when things are uncivilized, and I don't like all the disinformation. I don't like us bullying one another and not working together. And disengaging from some of these things really helps. As you know, I spend very, very little time on social media. And since I made that decision, my life has improved so much. And when I'm not reading nasty comments, I'm not aware of it, and most of the interactions that I have with human beings in the world are good. Um, and it, and even disengaging from just the normal reading and podcasts that I listen to, uh, you know, made me feel a little bit lighter this week. Um, so I don't know. I guess I'd just say, like, if folks are feeling tense about the way of the world right now, the state of things, maybe try that. It has been good for me just to take a step back and to try to have one-on-one conversations, even if it's over Zoom. It's not quite the same as person, but in person, but it does help us connect. And yeah, just step back a little bit.
Right on. Thanks, Eric. Well, guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And it's time now for final thoughts, which I call the way I see it. This one is for all my beloved Republican friends out there tonight. The way I see it, Republican Trump supporters should be furious with Trump. In order to be reelected, Trump, like any other politician, needs to move people who can be moved over to his camp. Anybody running for public office has to be able to do that. There are people who will never waver in their devotion to Trump. He doesn't need to worry about them. He's got their vote. There are the Democratic loyalists who will stop at nothing to see him removed from office no matter what. He doesn't need to worry about them either. They're not gettable votes. But people like me, we're gettable. I'm a liberal-leaning person, but I have very little loyalty to the Democratic Party. I see the DNC as a largely corrupt organization. And I consider the Clintons, the Pelosi's, and yes, the Bidens of the world to be part of the problem that allowed Trump to happen in the first place. Namely, the corporatization of Washington, D.C., and the subsequent decline of representative government in the U.S. I could really go for an outsider who could shake things up on Capitol Hill. In the past few weeks, President Trump has done some downright good things. He signed an executive order to protect national parks, one of the largest conservation bills ever. He helped secure better relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. You could argue that he helped make the Middle East a little bit more stable by doing that. These are moves that should have someone like me thinking, maybe we should give this guy another 4 years. Nope. Those things don't even move the needle for me. And I am no fan of Joe Biden. When there were 20 Democratic candidates, I put him in 20th place. It's true, I'm on record saying I like anybody on that stage better, but make no mistake, when November rolls around, I will be eager to give my vote for Joe. And that's a loss for Trump, because people like me would have been gettable for him. But it's a bigger loss for you, Trump supporter. Trump's antics have eroded your chances that looked pretty good up until recently. The damage Trump has done to the Republican Party may well dismantle it for the foreseeable future. His toxic method of being has euthanized the respectability of the GOP for all but the most diehard devotees. Never in my life did I think I would live to see multiple conservative political action committees and campaigns working to oust a Republican incumbent. Never did I imagine I would see prominent Republicans speaking at a Democratic convention. But that is the reality today, and it has almost nothing to do with standard red versus blue politics. No, it's, as conservative author Rick Wilson, the man who helped get George W. Bush elected, the man who worked in the Department of Defense under Dick Cheney, as he says in his book of the same name, everything Trump touches dies. And that goes for my moderate liberal vote, and for many others like me who would have been gettable for Trump in November, if. And here's my list of ifs. This is for me to articulate to myself all the why don't you questions I get from my conservative friends throughout the week. So Trump could have won my vote in November if he weren't constantly and pathologically dishonest. To speak is to lie or misinform for this man. If he weren't pathetically insecure and childish, he's constantly engaging in the most petty sort of bullying and trash talking against the people he represents as president. Guys, his newsletter says the Democrats are nuts. That's the heading. That's more than half the country. He represents them. He's the president of the United States. This matters to me, in spite of the rough around the edges excuse employed by Trump apologists. Bottom line, in my opinion, people who lack maturity and dignity also tend to lack the other qualities necessary to lead. And as we've been learning the hard way for 3.5 years, right? If he weren't clearly uninformed about and unconcerned about the issues in front of him, I never again want to witness a sitting president stand at a podium and struggle that hard to read a speech that he clearly didn't care enough to even attempt to understand. Watching Trump struggle through what is clearly the labyrinth of the English language for him is almost as painful as that inevitable moment when he goes, quote, off script to tell us what a great job he's done, in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. I can't watch it anymore. If he wasn't constantly running this cheap hustle on America, are you ready? This is the hustle I'm talking about. Go on Fox News or to a rally where you know your audience is listening, rile up your base with tough talk about what you're going to do, most of it outside of the capabilities of your powers as president. Then 2 days later, stand at the podium at the White House where you actually have to be the president and walk it back. And then attack the press because they called you out for being full of crap. If he could keep a team together, as Carol said earlier, this guy either fires anyone who disagrees with him or people get the hell out of there or they go to prison. You can't run the government without qualified people at their posts, not a government like ours. This seems to escape Trump, whose approach is, I'll be the oversight. Remember that? That's an actual quote. I'll be the oversight. He said that about the $500 billion stimulus package. And then large corporations pilfered billions while no one provided oversight. If he hadn't emboldened so many to revel in the worst parts of human character, Trump as role model has been a perhaps irreparable disaster for the collective character and, yes, the decency and the civility of the United States, as we talked about tonight. Cheap insults and petty personal attacks, once beneath us, are now fashionable thanks to this spiteful guy. And bigotry and misogyny, they're back in vogue as well, as witnessed by the contraband for sale on his own website, which I tried to show you tonight. And the popular memes out there being shared by conservatives, like I saw it, I have it on, I can show it to you. Joe and the Ho 2020. Yes, Trump enthusiasts are attacking Kamala Harris on her sexual past while ignoring Trump's. Wow. He didn't excel at establishing dangerous precedents. For example, you were impeached unfairly? Great. Prove it in court. But don't decide you don't have to show up for subpoenas and disallow witnesses at your trial through a puppet government, a puppet Congress. What happens to the impeachment process from here out? What becomes of congressional oversight of the executive office? It's been rendered a joke by the Trump administration and his Senate enablers. And appointing an AG to do the White House's bidding, that's dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. And if you don't see that, then don't complain when it's Democrats sending federal troops into your town. If he didn't clearly love dictators and aspire to be one when he grows up, if you don't see the line drawn between Trump being, quote, in love with Kim Jong-un and a statement like, when somebody is the president of the United States, the authority is total, and that's the way it's got to be. It's total. That's an actual Trump quote. Look it up. Well, then if you don't see that, I don't know what I can tell you. But finally, there's my big I told you so moment. You can go look up my past posts on Facebook when I used to write stuff and post it on there. I said back in 2017, Trump is dangerous, not because of politics, but because he is almost purely a malignant narcissist by personality. And those types of people are predictable, charismatic and high energy when things are going well, and they can accept credit for that. But if things go south, you're in trouble. Because when faced with a true crisis, a narcissist will let it all burn down before they let it reflect badly on themselves by taking responsibility. And well, here we are. We just posted the worst economic quarter in the history of the United States, due in no small part to the fact that when a true crisis hit in the form of a pandemic, our president spent the first month lying about the severity of it to protect his reputation. And since then, he's used some of the screen and stage time given him to downplay the significance of the problem while promoting quackery and even witch doctory. He's used some of it to falsely blame the previous administration. And once again, I'd encourage you to go look up the empty shelves accusation. He accused the Obama administration of leaving empty shelves for him, a comment the White House had to walk back and apologize for. But mostly, he's used his platform during a time when 1,000 people per day are dying to tell us what a great job he's doing. Man, sometimes I hate being right. Now hold on there, Trump supporter. Before you attack me and defend him, make sure you're not directing your anger at the wrong person. Trump should have gotten someone like me to join you, and he failed. And for the verifiable reasons that I gave above, not because I can't get over Hillary. Look, at this point, if you defend and support this man, not the political party, but the man, I believe you've been pretty much brainwashed into a cult. But I could be wrong about that. So let's just leave it at this. You and I have such different opinions about what constitutes character, decency, leadership, and the direction our country ought to be moving in, that we aren't going to find a resolution in a social media thread. But this fact remains. As disillusioned with I was and continue to be with political parties and DC's money to elite, robbing the till and influencing elections and buying people outright and all that back and forth left and right crap in the media, as disillusioned as I am, a true outsider should have been able to get me. And Trump supporters should be furious about that. If Trump gets a few thousand moderates in a few states, he would have straight up strolled back into the White House in November without even working up a sweat. Instead, because he lacked the skill to face the challenges of a pandemic, because he lacked any empathy or fraternity with anyone who doesn't kiss the ring, because he's been unable to quell the fires of rage over social injustice, but has rather fanned those flames, because he is an uncontrollable narcissist, he will likely lose in November. I could be wrong, but it looks that way. And if that happens, you, Trump supporter, will not get what you want. And it will not be because of the radical left or Sleepy Joe or the liberal media. It will be because the man in whom you placed your trust was incapable of delivering what you wanted to you. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for listening to my diatribe about that. And I hope you all have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll be back next week. Stay safe. Wear your mask.
Be safe. Take care of each other, please.